Hey everyone, and welcome into week 2 of the high school playoffs for the Daily Reflector's Fearless Football Forecast. We're out here at South Central this week. He's Ronnie Woodward, I'm Jordan Anders, and we're out here to break down week 2 of the playoffs. Ronnie, we got two games. Yep. This thing has thinned out on us pretty quickly.
The two teams we probably thought we would still have at this point.
Pretty much for that we've assumed would be this far since, September probably?
Yeah.
So we got one home matchup at Pitt County. One team won last week. We had our two Pitt County teams, Farmville Central and Ayden-Grifton, were on the road last week and lost. Farmville lost at Beddingfield. Ayden-Grifton lost at Wallace Rose Hill. I think we both had those. Figured that's how those games were going to go.
Yep.
So real quick shout out to Coach Paul Cornwell and Scott Gardner and their staffs for helping us out this year with our coverage, and we appreciate that. But we're on to week 2 of the round 2 of the playoffs, and like I said, we got one game at home this week. That's going to be here at South Central on Friday night, which I will be at. And then but we're going to start, Ronnie, discussing the game that's on the road this week, which is going to be D.H. Conley was at home last week. I was out there for them just putting the boots to Northern Guilford, man. They were just that thing was we wondered if it was going to be new season, playoffs, different opponents, if the difficulty level was going to tick up. It might still, but it did not last week because they really just kind of put it on Northern Guilford. Playing a team from the same region, they have to travel to that region this week in Eastern Guilford. And this is a whole different matchup against a team that played for a state championship last year, came up a little bit short.
Okay. 4-5 matchup, right?
And okay. Right. And Conley being the 5, having to travel with an 11-1 record, a little weird, but we're gonna move past that. Because that's been a question for the last week or two. Conley going to this Eastern Guilford team that it's kind of the unstoppable force versus the immovable object, because we're talking an offense that's scoring 50-plus, averaging more than any team in the state, against a defense that's giving up an average of 8 points a game in Eastern Guilford. And it's like I said, it's going to be which one of those things can break. But in doing some research and talking to some people about that team, an Eastern Guilford team that has played really well this year. They've given up 19 points is the most game they've given up in any game this year.
Wow!
And to consider that with a team in a game that involves Conley is just pretty over my head and kind of hard to do. So I think I gotta imagine that Conley's probably going to be the highest scoring team that they will have seen, and will wind up with the highest point total. Question isn't going to be more than that, because Conley's defense, after kind of getting blitzed a little bit against South Central, they played well in the second half of that game, but they struggled in the first half. They came out last week and made it look like they had definitely put that behind them, and they just dominated Northern Guilford. They were in the backfield all night. Northern Guilford couldn't get anything going. Now going to an Eastern Guilford team that has some explosiveness and has scored some points this year. But I like Conley here. It's not an easy trip. That's a long trip. Was out at Conley on Tuesday. Coach Nate Connor was talking about the fact they'll wind up getting back from there about probably 1:30, 2 a.m. And so that's a long trip, but I believe they'll be coming back with a win, because I just from what I've seen about Eastern Guilford and the people I've talked to have basically made it clear that defense is really good. 8 points a game speaks for itself, but they haven't seen anything the caliber of what Conley has to offer on offense. So I think the Vikings go on the road and advance to the third round.
All right. A couple of notes here. You mentioned the 19 points they've given up. That was against Greensboro Page, which I believe is undefeated, one of the best teams in the state in the 4A level. So one thing to touch on here, kind of big picture. We talked about this before we turned on the phone here. The 3AA East is completely stacked, which people are wondering, well, how's Conley's really good? How are they a 5 seed? Is because, in short, Max Preps favors schedule of strength. It helps you out. So Eastern Guilford played they're in that area, the Greensboro, Guilford County area, really good. They only have a few losses. They got a bump there. The number 1 seed is Clayton. They're undefeated. Number 2 seed is New Hanover. Really, really good, consistent all year. The number 3 seed, Lee County, also undefeated. And then we get to the 4-5. That doesn't even include Greensboro Dudley, which I think is like the 9-10 seed. They've already pulled an upset. So that side, again, of the 3AA East is just stacked. So it's easy to say, like, oh, Conley got a raw deal, but kind of not. There's nowhere to go.
Those teams earned it.
Like 1 through 5 is kind of a shakeup, and something we mentioned that this is going to be fun. This is kind of your classic. I feel like It's really tough, but in that bracket, one of those teams, probably one of those 5, and maybe you throw Dudley in the mix too as 6, is really going to earn it to get to Raleigh or Wake Forest or wherever the state championship is, because they're all really good. There's no way around it. This is a matchup, same type of thing. You mentioned really good offense versus a really good defense. I'm going to take Conley as well. I'll get into this here in a little bit maybe with South Central, but I just don't think – I don't know. I'm not thrilled about either Pitt County team to some extent, but I just can't pick against Conley right now. I know this is a tough matchup. I know they're going to have tough matchups from here on out, but somebody's got to beat them. I think they haven't lost since the first week of the season. They're
straight.
Just rolling. They just beat South Central 78-43. South Central obviously is a pretty good team. They almost scored 80 points. So. Yeah. This is a fun one. I wish, one of us could make the trip to go cover this thing. And interested to see how it's going to play out for sure. But I'll take the Vikings. I'll take C.J. Johnson, Holton Ahlers to score enough points to win. It might even be low scoring. This might be kind of the atypical of what we've seen with Conley, where it's 70-something to 50 or whatever. It might be 28-20. I don't know. It might be low scoring. It might even be like 14-10. I don't know. But I'll take Conley to win a close one. And good luck to the Vikings, because I think these top 5-6 teams that are in the 3A, they're better than the 4A teams. I think they're better than some of the 4A teams. There's no doubt. I mean, you look at Conley just beat South Central by 3 or 4 touchdowns. The 3 AA stacked. But I'll take Ahlers and the Vikings until they lose. That might be whenever. It might be this Friday. It wouldn't surprise me. But I'm taking the Vikings in a close one. Another one which we probably think will be close with South Central here in Winterville. I'll preview this one. Nightdale comes to South Central. Nightdale pulled an upset last week. So they are a 10 or 11 seed, I believe. They knocked off Overhill. So they're here kind of as a surprise, upset first-round winner. South Central got a bye last week, which is interesting. One thing I wanted to touch on, I haven't seen this as far as I've covered and followed high school football, that you get a first-round bye. Again, I've never seen this. There's 4 teams in the 4A, at least I know, that got it. South Central, as the 4 seed, was kind of the last one to get a bye. So they haven't played since losing and giving up nearly 80 points to Conley. I'm not sure if that's a good thing, a bad thing. I'm assuming that's good probably for the coaches, for preparation, extra film, extra time. I'm not sure how that is with the players, to be honest, to kind of break up their flow, their schedule a little bit. I don't know. I'm interested to see, did they get off to a slow start and maybe you say the bye hurt, or they get off to a fast start and they're healthy and you say, hey, the bye helped South Central. But overall, this is a huge game. Kind of big picture again. This is huge for South Central. I think as a school, as a program, they're hosting a second-round 4A football game. This is not this is the youngest school in Pitt County. It's a team that does a program school. It doesn't have a ton of football history. They've had some good players every now and then. But again, I think this is a huge deal. I hope for South Central's sake, these fans, the stands are packed with fans. They're into it. Because, again, this is big time. This isn't just, hey, West Craven's coming in town. This is kind of random game. This is a big-time 4A playoff matchup. A team from the Raleigh area, kind of quasi-Raleigh area coming here. One thing we talked about to touch on Nightdale, they don't do a whole lot great. Again, they pulled an upset in the first round, but they don't have an 1,000-yard rusher. Their quarterback here has about 800 yards, only 6 touchdowns on the season. I think 5 interceptions. Again, I'm kind of surprised to some extent that they're still here. Maybe that speaks to there's so many 3 AA teams that are so good. Maybe the 4A is a little weaker in the East. But yeah, again, overall, this is a big opportunity for the Falcons. They've already beaten Rose. I'll call it their Super Bowl, their fastball win of the year, regardless of what happens. They beat J.H. Rose. That was a huge deal. And now they're hosting, as I said, a second-round playoff game. I just think it's a big moment for South Central. I'm interested to see how they play. How they respond in that situation. They've never really been in this situation before. They had a big game against Conley, obviously, and I think they were just overmatched against a Conley team that's better. So how did they respond, I think, is a big thing, and how have they regrouped since that night? I know you covered that game, and I think came away pretty impressed with South Central despite getting up that many points. I'm rambling on here. I'll take the Falcons. Again, I'm not thrilled about it. I don't know how good South Central really is as far as a deep playoff run. I don't think this is like a state championship team or anything, where Conley maybe could be. But I just don't think Nightdale's that great. No, just to be honest, they're 7-5. A couple of things I wrote down. earlier. They lost to Fuquay Arena. They lost to Inlow. I'm from that area. I went to Garner. I kind of know a little bit about those teams. Inlow used to be our homecoming team every year, and we used to beat them.
That's a sign.
I didn't play, but Garner won like 60-3 every year. Fuquay is not good. So I just don't think this Knightdale team's that good. That said, they're 4-1 in their last 5 games. I don't know if they've kind of hit their stride or figured some things out. But throughout the course of the year, South Central just has a better resume, looks to be a better team. Again, not thrilled about either one of our teams. I'd be somewhat surprised if they both win. We do have 2 Pitt County teams playing on Thanksgiving, but I think this matchup just favors the Falcons at home. I'll take South Central. They need to play well. They need to play well on defense for sure and come up with some stops, but I'll take them to win a close one probably at home.
Yeah, and haven't seen the Falcons. I'm gonna have a little more confidence in them than you.
Okay.
And I'm gonna take them here. And,
I don't like either one.
And this is Wednesday afternoon that we're taping this. I talked to Andy too about this matchup not an hour ago, and about the fact that this is a run. This is kind of an triple option team that's coming in here that does some different things offensively. But I think this is a situation. You mentioned the night against Conley a couple weeks ago. I did come away impressed because they came out in the first half and they were not intimidated by a very daunting task. And ultimately, in the second half, had a couple of dry possessions against a team that you just can't do that against because they're so good offensively. I think that was what kind of let that game get out of hand. But they played well and gave a really good accounting of themselves. And I think, to your point about the bye in talking with Coach too, a lot of last week kind of some of the understandable, maybe don't want to say lack of focus, but maybe taking your foot off the gas a little bit because they didn't have a game last week, didn't have an opponent.
Yeah.
He said as soon as they got out here on Monday, it was right back to work, and knowing that they have this team in Knightdale, which, like you said, not a ton jumps out at you as being super impressive, at least statistically.
Yeah.
So I do like the Falcons here. This is the first, as far as I could find, this is the first home playoff game here since 2010. So it's an opportunity that they've got to take advantage of, and I believe they will. I believe they're too good and too skilled. Now next week, if they win, their likely prize is a trip to Scotland County, which is we'll discuss next week if that is the case. But I do like the Falcons here, and I think they pick up the win, and I think we are spending Thanksgiving week trying to follow 2 teams that are getting ready for a playoff game on Black Friday.
Yeah.
So that'll be fun. That's those are the 2 matchups. Like I said, I'll be here on Friday night. Looking forward to that. We'll also have a report in the paper on Conley's trip to Eastern Guilford. It'll hopefully get back to us long before they will, because of the.
Or else I'm going to be in trouble on the test Friday night.
That's a long trip, and so we'll see how they deal with that. I mean, that's not that's a long day trying to get out of school and make that hike up there. But we both picked the Vikings, both picked the Falcons. We'll have reports on those in Saturday's paper at reflector.com. I'll have updates on Twitter at reflectorjordan. It's that time of year, Ronnie. This is fun.
Yeah,
this is looking forward to this. We'll have you covered for those, and assuming we have at least one game next week, we'll do a forecast to break that down. So thank you guys for watching. Enjoy the second round of the playoffs, and we'll see you next week.